2016 indie game Firewatch is widely considered an indie hit, selling more than 500,000 copies in its first month. But what went into the development of this game by 13 people? What highs and lows did they go through? Let's explore that question in the second episode of Stories from GameDev. On September 18, 2013, in Bellevue, Washington, Sean Vanaman, Jay Krotkin, Nels Anderson, and Ollie Moss founded Campo Santo Productions. Let's talk about who these people are. Vanaman is a video game designer born in Cork, Ireland. He worked on numerous other games before joining Telltale Games and becoming project lead on The Walking Dead. On September 18, 2013, he left Telltale along with Jay Krotkin to found Campo Santo, since he felt he was getting too comfortable with his position at the studio. Jay Krotkin began his career by writing for the International House of Mojo Adventure Games and co-founding Idle Thumbs. He joined Telltale Games as a graphic designer and became co-project lead on The Walking Dead along with Vanaman before leaving for Campo Santo. Nels Anderson previously worked on Mark of the Ninja by Cly Entertainment before leaving and, along with the previous two people, founding Campo Santo. And finally, Ollie Moss, who is a graphic designer known for designing book covers for the Harry Potter books and reimagining the Star Wars posters, along with other work. Moss was responsible for the game's graphic design and color scheme, which fit his style heavily. Soon after, Jane Ngo, a 3D graphics designer, joined the team to work on the game's environment, along with Chris Remo, composer of the game's music. Together, they chose Panic, a company known for macOS applications, to publish the game. After Firewatch's commercial success, Panic would, in fact, go on to publish more games like Untitled Goose Game in 2019. In March of 2014, Ollie Moss made Painting, which looked similar to the game's visual style. After a camping trip to Yellowstone National Park and some inspiration from New Deal advertisements, Jane started to turn the painting into a 3D environment. She disapproved of tree creation tools and therefore handcrafted 26 different types of trees that were placed within the game more than 4,500 times. The team also employed a custom shader to make the foliage more stylized. The Firewatch towers themselves are actually quite realistic, since they used realistic lumber types for the towers. At PAX 2014, the team showcased the first demo of the game. The demo showed a simple game with a Firewatch tower where the team picked up books and ran around the wilderness. Some 4 months later, the first official trailer for the game was released on the 30th of August 2014. The trailer showed some in-game footage as well as some cinematics, while Henry, the game's main protagonist, who runs away from his messy life as a volunteer at Firewatch, and Delilah, the voice that guides you throughout the game, are talking on the radio. According to a podcast with Ollie Moss by IGN, the radio mechanic was based on how BioShock establishes the relationship between the player and Atlas.
So imagine BioShock, where Atlas wasn't just a non-interactive voice on the end of a radio. Imagine if you could talk back and change your relationship with him, and change how you feel about that character and how that character feels about you.
Allegedly, Firewatch was at one point intended to have a more complicated dialogue system, with the player being able to communicate with other hikers. This was scrapped due to the idea's expense at the team's deadline. The team cast Cissy Jones, a voice actress known for her work in The Walking Dead and GTA 5, to take on the part of Delilah, and after some consideration they cast Rich Sommer as the voice of Henry. What's interesting, Jones and Sommer actually never met during the recording, since they were recording their parts in different studios. They were, however, on a Skype call to make the conversation sound natural. That's why the dialogue in the game is filled with ahs and ums. It's to make the conversation natural. The alleged release date for the game was said to be in 2015. The developers did not meet this, but 2015 wasn't an empty year. For starters, the developers hosted a public playtest on GDC in 2015 and held a panel entitled The Art of Firewatch, in which they explored the game's art and design.
Details into the world. I mentioned earlier that no matter
Later, in June 2015, the team visited E3 where they announced that the game would come to PS4, but that this would be the only console version. They did, however, release the game on more consoles later. We'll get into that. On February 9, 2016, Firewatch officially released on Windows, macOS, Linux and PlayStation, receiving generally positive reviews. Later that year, Camposanto announced multiple other things. First, they announced that Firewatch would launch on Xbox One on September 25th, 2016, contrary to their statement that the PS4 version could be the only one. This was the release date in the USA, since the Europe and Australia versions were delayed due to rating issues. Next, they announced that players would be able to tour the world in VR using the HTC Vive or Oculus Rift headsets via the Steam application Destinations. For this, the game was rebuilt on the Source game engine, while originally it was developed on Unity. On November 10th, Firewatch was made compatible with the PS4 Pro, with 4K resolution and HDR. This version of the game, along with the Steam version soon after, had the free roam mode enabled, meaning players could explore the world freely if they wanted to. In partnership with Limited Run Games, Camposanto distributed 10,000 physical copies of the game for the PS4. In April 2018, Camposanto announced that they would release the game on the Nintendo Switch later that year. It was clarified that the Switch port would be a heavily optimized version of the game, but that it would also have some exclusive elements. The worldwide release date was set to be on December 17, 2018. In 2018 also, Valve acquired Camposanto, with the studio moving to Valve's Bellevue, Washington headquarters, and making In the Valley of Gods, the studio's next debut game as a Valve game. Later, in 2019, Sean Vanaman moved to the writing team for Half-Life Alyx, leaving Camposanto. Since its release, the game got generally favorable reviews from critics and players alike. Steve Hansen at Destructoid praised the game's dialogue system and the voice performances themselves. The sound design supposedly eluded a Hitchcockian sense of fear. Jeff Cobb from Game Informer wrote that he was immediately drawn to the game because of the novelty of taking part on something so mundane. He observed the game's dialogue system brought life into the game, but he criticized the ending, feeling that it was unsatisfactory. Ryan McCaffrey wrote that he approved of the script and the voice acting, saying it was tense, scary and funny, sometimes all within a few minutes of each other, but he, like other reviewers, criticized the ending, feeling that it was a bit lacking. Justin Towell of GamesRadar praised the game's voice acting and sound design, while criticizing its continuity. He also said that the game had low replay value, comparing it to Journey, an indie hit by Santa Monica Studio. Over the game's lifetime, it was nominated and won multiple awards, such as being nominated for Best Narrative in the 2016 Game Awards, winning the Best Indie Game in the 2016 Golden Joystick Awards, being nominated for multiple categories in the 2017 DICE Awards, and winning the Best Debut, Best Narrative categories in the 2017 Game Developers' Choice Awards. On August 17, 2020, it was announced that Camposanto were partnering with Blindspotting producers Snoot Entertainment to bring Firewatch to the big screen. Vanaman praised the studio's members, Jess and Keith, as being hard-working and visionary film producers with impeccable taste in video games. The Firewatch movie was actually considered before in 2016 when it was supposed to be made by Good Universe, but when that studio was sold to Lionsgate in 2017, the rights returned to Camposanto. This is my first video of 2022, and I'm sorry it took so long, but I hope to continue this series, Stories from GameDev, more regularly, since I really enjoyed writing this video, which is usually the most tedious part of the video making process for me. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in some time for another story from GameDev.
Maybe this is all just a coincidence, but my gut says that there's something bad going on.